9,000 people attended the Kenosha Theater on opening day, hailed as the castle in Spain, the playground of the North Shore, a masterpiece of a master builder. This theater went on to introduce the city to talking pictures. The second talking picture ever made, Melody of Love, premiered at the Kenosha Theater. With over 2,400 seats, the Kenosha Theater was the hub of activity in the downtown. It wasn't an unusual sight to see people lined up around the corner to see the matinees and the shows as they premiered. This most lavish interior in the entire state was one of Universal Studios' prize holdings. It was commissioned by Carl Laemmle himself, the founder of Universal Studios, because he lived in Wisconsin. So Universal Studios built one of its finest theaters at the gateway to his home state. Fully equipped with stage rigging and dressing rooms, the theater quickly became a favorite on the vaudeville and live show circuit. In those days, it was common for an army of ushers to take care of patrons and direct them to their seats. Over the years, some of the finest performers graced the stage. Harry Blackstone, the famous magician, made an elephant disappear. The Three Stooges came and did a live Hollywood revue. And Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, performed on the stage of the Kenosha. Weekend matinees brought throngs of children downtown. The theater held many contests and had newsreels to keep the adults informed of what was going on around the world, especially during World War II. The theater became an important part of Kenosha's fabric. All of the big bands of the day played the Kenosha, the Mills Brothers, and even Lawrence Welk. There were stories of Lawrence Welk's orchestra drinking at Sharkey's bar behind the theater moments before they were to go on stage. But as the years went on and television entered the scene, the Kenosha Theater could no longer support the dwindling amount of patrons. So on March 18, 1963, after showing Glenn Ford and Hope Lang in Love is a Ball, the Kenosha Theater closed. Standard Theaters, the operators of both the Kenosha and the Lake Theater downtown, placed a deed restriction on the building saying that it could not be used as a theater for 25 years, thus sealing the fate of the city's most lavish and opulent interior. When we first walked into the building in 1983 and the doors went open revealing the ornate cast plaster, I couldn't believe that this building was sitting here left to decay. It was actually raining inside because the roof had so many holes. We walked through the apartment building and realized that this was the city's largest pigeon coop and that it was heading for the wrecking ball if no one did something. And you hear all the time about groups that get together to say, save this and save that. Well, we decided to put our money where our mouth was. And we formed a partnership and bought the building and renovated the apartments so at least the building would pay for itself. The partnership envisioned the restoration of the Kenosha to be the southern anchor for the three other 1920s theater auditoriums within the downtown area. They realized there was a potential for an entertainment district. But when Chrysler announced in 1988 that it would cease auto assembly and more than 5,000 people would lose their jobs, any talk of theater restoration was seen as frivolous, regardless of the argument of the economic impact it would have on an already distressed business district. But while the Kenosha Group was having little success, there was a man who was restoring movie palaces throughout the country. For 2 decades, he was demonstrating how revitalizing old theaters had a major positive economic impact on their communities.
I found in restoring them, the closer I get back to the original concept of making them really accessible and allowing the wonderment to show through and take people to a different part of their life is the magic of what they were and are still today.
Think of what some communities would be like without their major movie palace. What about Chicago without the Chicago Theater?
No one remembers how close we came to losing that magnificent edifice. I had about 2 weeks to find a tenant that could pay $800,000 a year, which then was the highest rent in the country for any theater. And then to be able to get Sinatra to open it in Chicago, and he was in an amazingly good mood. It was like a glorious experience. We had him for 5 performances, and then the very next week we had Bill Cosby, who was at the peak of his career doing 6 shows.
Ray's track record is astounding. His depth of experience is like no other, and his passion for detailed and functional restoration is only matched by his determination that these beautiful structures make sense economically. Ray has been involved with over 34 theater restorations around the country. He has been recognized throughout the industry as the restoration guru. He's the founder of Playhouse Square in Cleveland, Ohio, the second largest grossing theater district in the country. He's even been awarded an honorary doctorate from Case Western Reserve University for his work in revitalizing theaters and communities across the nation. His is not a career that sought fame and fortune, but there is no denying that his legacy will touch millions with the grandeur of the buildings he's saved and the celebration of imagination that takes place within them.
We're putting in a freight elevator. It goes from the basement to the stage floor to the mezzanine.
It's my ceiling height. Again, I've got to do the HVAC yet, which will be exposed.
When Ray gave tours of the Genesee during restoration, it was obvious how much attention he paid to details. The performers, workers, and the customers were all considered with great care in all of his plans.
Here, you see the street light? That'll be open to the top of the marquee porch. All my life I've run theaters, and in most of the movie palaces we restored, you never see this because you'll have the nice fancy seats up front, but people that have paid taxes all their lives and are now retired on a fixed income buy the cheap seats in the upper balcony, and you see these old people crawling up the back staircase. Well, here they'll be able to park within 50 feet of their seat, come in on the same level where they sit if they want to. They can sit any place else, but if they want the real value, and again, they'd be like at the boxes at the opera. And the back row is, at the narrowest place, is 5 feet wide. So they can sit down, and there's room to get walkers by or wheelchairs by, and it's just a really nice situation.
But it wasn't meant to be. Regardless of his track record, the city and the powers that be decided that the business plan that the building was designed to operate under would be jettisoned in favor of running the theater as a rental house, doing one-night stands, dooming the operation of the theater as a burden to the taxpayers of Waukegan, and serving as the example that stopped any movement on the restoration of the Kenosha. It boggles my mind that Waukegan actually had the vision to restore their theater. They had the country's foremost theater restoration specialist, the founder of Playhouse Square, the second largest grossing theater district in the country next to Broadway. They had this package there, and they didn't follow through. They designed this building to work under a specific business plan, and they didn't follow through. The reason Waukegan invested $32 million on the Genesee Theater and parking garage was for economic development. The main focus of the theater design and operating plan was to create as much traffic flow as possible. The theater is designed to do just that. The problem is the current operating plan does just the opposite.
Well, the plan was huge by design. We would give tours and explain to people why we were doing everything, why the balcony was expanded, why we had such fabulous VIP lounges, why we had immense amounts of toilets for the women's restrooms. And it was all gauged around a plan that at the end of the day was designed to bring in hundreds of thousands of people to our theater. Without that plan, it wouldn't have driven the designs of the theater as it stands today.
The least effective way to run a theater, any theater, is with one-night stands and just one show at a time. So each show is a gamble. It's either win, lose, or draw for every show. Each show is like starting up a mini business. It is also the most expensive way to present a show for both the theater and the attraction. The least effective way to run a theater that does one show at a time is to do it as a rental house. To understand why, one needs to look at the concert industry as it exists today. Live Nation is currently the dominant force in the industry. They point out that promoter profit is disappearing. The money they earn today comes almost exclusively from ancillary income, parking, box offices, concessions, advertising, and sponsorships. So the only way the Genesee Theater gets a show is if some promoter thinks he or she can make a profit. So they rent the theater and roll the dice. A theater operating like that will be lucky to do 40 or 50 shows a year. If this doesn't seem to be true, just look at what the Genesee has presented over the last 7 years. So what is the alternative? If the goal is to present a minimum of 208 performances per year, it would be obvious there is no way an operator will come close to meeting that goal by doing one show at a time. 208 different attractions just doesn't make any sense. So one needs to consider the standard 8-performance week, which means instead of 208 different attractions, an operator can achieve his goal with only 26 different attractions. The Genesee is currently doing more than that now. The 8-performance week is standard in the Broadway and legitimate theater industries and has been for years. There are jazz houses that do even more. As an example, the Blue Note in New York schedules 12 shows a week on a regular basis for each performer. The next question is, how does one market 8 shows in 1 week when the Genesee is currently having trouble selling out one? It is important to look at how sports and arts marketing is being done across the nation. What does every sports team, Broadway presenter, legitimate theater, symphony orchestra, ballet, and opera company have in common? They all have season tickets or subscriptions. None of them sell just one game or performance at a time, nor could they and have any hope of staying in business. The marketing approach that makes the most sense and is the least risky is what we like to call talent-based programming, value-driven marketing. We create an anchor use base of 144 performances in the form of 3 6-week variety seasons. 6 different shows of as wide a variety of attractions as possible. We focus the season to be as attractive as possible to the over 50 demographic.
We've gotten older now as a country and as a world population, and people over 50 are my target because they're completely underserved. They're not the kind of folks that want to go to a concert. They want to get out of the house and have a good time and not spend a fortune. They want to see a show. It's not a concert mentality.
Nothing is more compelling than the perception of exceptional value. The goal is to keep our marketing simple and easy to promote. We do this by creating an extreme offer. We price all of our tickets at $49.90 or under $50. We develop 2 offers: buy 3 shows, get 3 shows free for $149.70 or under $150, which is under $25 per show for shows that are currently selling for in excess of $60 to $75. The second offer is buy 2 shows, get 4 shows free for $99.80 or under $100, which is under $17 a ticket, again, for shows currently selling in excess of $60 to $75. We repeat the variety season 3 times a year.
And it's all in the numbers. And when you structure selling a package where you're selling a 6-show season and you have $1 million a season to spend on the attraction, you can virtually buy 90 to 95% of all of the attractions that are available in the country.
2 points are worth noting. Number 1, most working attractions will do 8 shows in 1 week for what they would normally get for 2 to 4 one-night stands. And number 2, most quality attractions can sell 2 to 6 times as many single tickets for 8 performances as they would for a one-night stand. In this way, we are using the attractions to create a going concern. We get rid of Ticketmaster and run our own box office. We also run our own concessions. If we can't generate $3 to $5 per person in a theater that has 7 lounges, we should give up our day jobs. And because the theater is now a going concern, it is easy to generate a significant amount of revenue from sponsorships, advertising, and development. It's all quite simple when one breaks down the operation into reasonable, doable pieces. This greatly reduces the risk and institutionalizes the presentations. And all of this can be accomplished through direct marketing to the 750,000 people that live within 15 miles of the Genesee Theater. Currently, those 750,000 people spend nearly $1.2 billion a year on entertainment and another $1.1 billion a year on dining out. About 60% of the audience will have a meal out with the show. The opportunities are virtually without limit. We can't emphasize enough the importance of developing something that can be direct marketed with an extreme offer. We must be sensitive to the downturn in the economy. Entertainment needs to be an escape, not a burdensome investment. The Genesee needs to be accessible to as much of the close-in market as possible. Proximity is our greatest asset. It is not a disadvantage. The theater was originally built to bring entertainment to the neighborhood so people didn't have to trek to Milwaukee or Chicago for a show. Capitalize on the location of the Genesee Theater. It is an asset and not a liability.
My favorite offer is buy 3 shows, get 3 shows free. And when you structure a 6-show season and people are only paying for 3 of them, it is just, it's such an amazing value. It makes it almost irresistible. And it allows people to try new things. And it's amazing when people look at a 6-show season and you have a chance to embellish what each individual act is doing. Everybody finds a different 3, which is pretty amazing. And it's just, that's what we've learned from doing this a lot, that the buy 3, get 3 free, the exceptional, compelling, extreme offer is just magical. People are actually excited about participating because it is so special.
The way things are right now is that the city owns this beautiful Ferrari, right? And they've got it in this garage, and they close the garage door, and they've taken the little clicker and thrown it into the trash. And they're not taking that thing out for a spin. What really needs to happen is the realization that, well, there's a lot of irons in the fire, different types of things happening. However, we have this Ferrari sitting here. Why are we not taking this thing out on the road and at least trying to see what it can do?
My ideal scenario would be that we somehow convince our city leadership to get tax-exempt revenue bonds. We get a consortium of corporations to back those revenue bonds operate as the backstop, and we finally restore the Kenosha Theater to the economic engine that I know it can become, and we show Waukegan how it's done.
The attempt to even make it work was never undertaken. It was pushed off to the side and said, we're going to go in a different direction. And now nobody looks back at that. We're looking at all different types of other things. However, it's still sitting there with a huge investment, over $20 million, that has the potential still, as it did when we first started, to be an economic generator, to be a catalyst for downtown. That's never changed. It's still the Ferrari sitting in the garage.
My second ideal scenario would be that Ray Shepardson and his team takes over the Genesee Theater and operates it in a way that demonstrates to the people of Kenosha that these things can make money, and actually take some of the money that spins off from the Genesee to see how it can be used to restore the Kenosha. There's got to be some way that these things can work out.
The one thing that's exciting is that these theaters are built, they were built way back in the late 20s for a reason, just to make money. It wasn't there to, oh, isn't Kenosha nice, or isn't Waukegan nice, and we should build this really nice theater because we want to build this thing that's just going to be a good thing to look at. Well, certainly not. Obviously, it was built for economic reasons. And why we don't take that to heart now is crazy, where we've got, again, I like to use the word tool, we've got these tools that we can fill regularly for the same reasons they did back in the late 20s, to have people come here and spend money and have a great time. The upside now is that we can further the use of that tool in downtowns that need it, where there's empty storefronts and there's potential restaurants. The tool gets bigger now. It becomes a more important tool.
The thing that I find kind of exciting about the Kenosha project is that no matter how much a project costs, it always contributes significantly more than whatever it costs when it's operated properly and it's organized and presented in a way that makes the most sense and can have the highest impact. And what I try to do, being first and foremost an avid preservationist, is I try focus on making my buildings economically viable. And that's the neat thing about the Kenosha. It's been around long enough so there's been enough time to plan it and think through the process to make it economically viable. So it's not going to be a money pit where it's a drain and something that has to be subsidized, but actually will create jobs, create revenue, and actually be able to pay back what it costs to build it. And that's pretty magical, especially the way things are being done now. It's just an unbelievable opportunity whose time has really come.